bring up. So how would I do a ridge reduction a lot easier than this? So we have a tool also called the planer cut tool. Now, this tool can get a little intense because you're drawing a line, and everything on one side of that line goes away. So it's a flat plane, so you have to be really careful that you don't overdo it with this tool. There are, like I said, some major companies who use this tool regularly. Now, my issue with it is it's a flat plane. How many arches do you know of that are perfectly flat? I've never seen one, especially in the lower. So you run the risk of losing the retromolar pads, things that don't typically go away. So you can see how mine just did here. It did the opposite side. So there's actually a swap cut direction button or checkbox up there that'll flip the side that it cuts away. So now you can see I've got a perfectly flat ridge here. Now I could go in here and I could sculpt some of this stuff. But again, I have no idea where my retromolar pads are now. It is handy for things like, let's say maybe I don't have any posterior teeth, but I've got all of the anterior teeth left in there. I can actually, there's another feature in here called local plane cut. So what it'll do is, whatever you draw through, it'll only plane cut those and not the rest of the arch, even if you move it way down. So you could use that. Unfortunately, with this arch, I have all the teeth. So it's not going to work well. I'm just going to do it this way just so I can get through it quicker, but normally you wouldn't do this.
Did you say normally you wouldn't do a local plane cut?
Normally I would take it on a case-by-case basis. So, for instance, like this case here, where they had all the teeth, when you have an instance like that, typically the retromolar pad is going to tilt up close to the occlusal plane of the last molars. So if I plane cut through all that, it's going to plane cut off my retromolar pads as well. And because of the way that the last molars typically are kind of right up against the retromolar pad, even the local plane cut's going to cut through the retromolar pad. So you could use the local plane cut on like a case where they have just the anterior teeth left, or they have large spans of edentulous areas in the posterior. So that way it separates the retromolar pad from the rest of the teeth. Then you could do it, and then just sculpt a little bit, and then you'd be done. But for the most part, you're going to want to use that manual tooth extraction tool.
Can you use it for a ridge reduction guide?
Yeah. Yeah, you could.
Would that be easier?
You could actually set up a case as like an intraoral scan, go through, extract the teeth, and then set the restoration up as like a splint or like a custom tray. Custom tray is what I typically use.
So cut the ridge off, then set it up as a splint, and cut out a window on the occlusal, so it could be seated.
I would actually use the custom tray because the workflow is shorter and it doesn't require an opposing. And then you can just do the custom tray, the main part, and then use the planer cut to cut the custom tray flat with the ridge, and then you've got a...
Oh, it will actually cut the formed custom tray.
Yeah, because what you would do is when you put the custom tray in, everything that you want off is above, so you just
Cut that off. I guess he wants you to get lower too. So it looks like you can design
So one thing I want to show show you guys too. So you can see on this lower, I didn't have really enough of the scan to actually do a denture. So one of the things that lab techs sometimes will do is they'll use the bases of their stone models to extend the borders down and out a little bit. So I can do the same thing here virtually. The trick to this though is, so you can see this flat area here. You cannot draw your outline on that as it is. You have to sculpt it. It creates really what we call triangles, really large triangles in those areas. So if you put your border outline on that, it's going to give you all kinds of issues. So the trick to use that area, if you want to extend down on there, is to come through here with the smoothing tool and see how I'm blending it and making it smooth. When it gets these big triangles like this, you're not going to be able to draw on that. So we have to make sure we eliminate that. So you are going to run into some areas, for example, as I go around where it's not going to smooth. So there's another tool that we can use to smooth those areas. But you have to do it all the way around, because anywhere that you put your border that you haven't done this on, it's not, you're going to get some errors when you go into those steps. So now that I've done this, let's say I wanted to extend certain areas of my border down, I can now use the minus tool and push those areas down a little bit. You just have to be careful, because if you do it too much, it's obviously not going to fit. So now, this area here that it wouldn't let me do, I can actually come here. We have a remove artifacts tool, so it looks like a Band-Aid. I can come in here and I can select all those crazy triangles there. You want to make sure that you get all of it. And then if I hit the apply button here, you see how they went away. So now I can go back in there and sculpt it. It happens randomly, and it might not happen in that particular spot every time, but it does happen quite a bit. So you want to make sure that you know how to do that. So now that I've reduced my upper and lower, I can see all of my vertical. Now, obviously, I've never seen a case that's given me that much vertical before, but yeah.
On the plane cut, how do you apply it? I've got the line and everything.
So the icon, so this icon up here at the very top, that you just click that icon again and it'll apply it.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
This.
Yeah, I just fixed it.
So once you draw your plane cut
The Band-Aid.
with this, you'll draw across, and then to apply the plane cut, you just click on this icon again and it applies it. Yeah. Try turning on the local.
No, I don't know.
Oh, you want to cut that back further?
Draw it up higher on the T.
Wait, just cut the whole platform down another 5 centimeters.
So drag it up a little bit, so very. Turn it back on. Try. There we go. Oh, it's because you're still on the upper. If you're trying to work on the lower, hit max. Now try. You were sculpting the upper and not the lower, so that's why it was kept disappearing on you. Is everyone doing okay? Does anyone need help or more time?
So you want to move out the entire model, or just the,
Every time I get a question on that, I always say, what would you do if you were doing this by hand? If you had a stone cast in your hand, how much would you actually adjust? So you don't want to overdo it. And it's really easy in digital to just overdo everything. It'll look great, but then you'll get it out, you'll send it to the doctor, and it won't fit because you overdid it. So that's why I said when I did the lower, I am going to plane cut this one, but I would never actually do this because look how much I reduced from the, let me turn this back on. So I took all that down from way below the posterior teeth. I would never do that on a live case. Yeah, I mean, you want to reduce less because then when they actually extract the teeth, you're going to get space in there to reline. If you reduce too much, then there's not going to be any space and it may not fit and seep down in certain areas. Does anyone need more time? So the bite was probably adjusted from the original. Like I said, this isn't a live case anymore. I do know that the guy who gave me these scans, the patient was really class 3. So he manually adjusted the lower arch forward some to get it more into like a normal occlusion. So that's probably why there's more. Yeah. But I'm going to show you a way to set the occlusal plane without using the bite.
Ready to go.
Is everybody at this point now with the occlusal plane step? Okay. No, you're fine. I just wanted to show that on the lower because it was really, really short. Yeah. All right, so in the occlusal plane step, one of the reasons that I said that you definitely want to be on the 2021 version of the software and not a previous version is everything 2020 and before, you have to click on the bite scan to set your occlusal plane. In 21, we changed it. So remember how I said we have the original scans up here? So I'm going to turn off my bite scan now, and I can actually now click on these original scans, where I couldn't do that in any previous version. And that's going to bring in my initial occlusal plane. Does that make sense to everyone? And then I just can position it where I want it. Now, this occlusal plane is really important because this is where your initial tooth position is going to start off when we go into smile composure. So if you have this set up wrong, your teeth are going to come in the wrong position initially, and you're going to have to move everything around quite a bit. So you always want to make sure that this is set as close as possible to where you want that occlusal plane to be. Now, I know that I had an issue here where the upper teeth were too tall. So maybe I want to bring this up a little bit. It really just depends on, you know, what information you have. If you have a wax rim and the doctor's marked up the wax rim properly, you want to follow the wax rim. If all they gave you was the original tooth positions, you're going to have to use your best judgment here and place these where you think they should be. You also have to keep in mind that you're going to be very limited on space on every immediate case that you do. The reason is because we just barely adjusted the ridges down, so we don't have a whole lot of interocclusal space between the upper and lower typically. So you may have to choose shorter teeth, or you may have to, with these being monoblock, there is no pockets and things like that. They're going to be, you know, all one piece. So, you know, you could do that. Now, if the doctor wants a functional try-in, meaning they want a gingiva base with teeth bonded into it, that's a whole new separate issue that you're going to have to address, because you don't have the space to have base and pocket or tooth material there. So you may have to limit some things. So you may have to choose a shorter tooth mold than what the patient is in currently. It just depends, you know, on how much you adjust away, how much you're comfortable adjusting away, and how much space you have. So, but you can see and measure everything. So I know based on this, that's where my original teeth were. So I'm going to use that as my starting position. Now, if I look at that without, I can see where I'm at in relationship to the ridge. So that doesn't look too bad to me. The lower is fairly good there. So I may be okay with this. Now, I can still come in here and make measurements. So I can again see what my overall space is. So I've got 46 millimeters of total space from vestibule to vestibule. I can check and see how much interocclusal space I have between the two arches based on what I did. So you have a lot of tools here to help you with tooth position and things like that. Additionally, if they gave you a photo of the patient, you could bring that in with the RealView engine, align it to the 3D models, and you can see your design inside the patient's mouth. So you would see, you know, oh, well, the upper teeth need to come up a little bit more because I'm showing too much upper tooth and not enough lower tooth. So there's a lot of things that you can do with the software to get you what you need.
Hit cancel. There you go.
There's an app on the iPhone for a 3D image that you can overlay with the 3Shape. What's your feeling on that?
I'll be honest. I don't like it. So here's my problem. Is most people that send the photo with the case expect what you design to be identical to what they did in the templates. So it's typically, there's a smile design component that goes with it.
Yeah, but if you don't use the smile design, you just import the position of the existing teeth out of the 3D.
I mean, yeah, you can use it. Now, the problem is it's just a 2D over a 3D, so it's not, sometimes it doesn't align as accurate as it should. You also have to have a high quality. You can't have just a picture from an iPhone, that won't work. Because as you blow that up, it's super grainy and it won't align and you'll have all kinds of issues. So yes, as a guide, it's fine. But when you're doing like other applications with it, like smile design, for example, I don't like it. Because with smile design, all we're doing is we're taking templates and we're putting them over the teeth, but we don't see what kind of space we have. We don't know where the actual teeth are. So you show the patient that and then they get something that doesn't look like that, they're not going to be happy. That's why I always do those with diagnostic wax-ups, so that they can see what it is. And with the software, you can actually do a diagnostic wax-up that they can put in their mouth and see it with their ear, instead of just on the model. So I just, 2D to 3D, it's not super accurate. So a guide, yes. As anything else, no. Does everyone have their occlusal plane set? All right, let's go next. Now we're going to do our characteristic points. So you'll see over on the left, we have a list of points that we're going to place. The green arrow points to the point that we're going to place right now. So every time we place one, it'll move down the list. So we're actually going to place them in that order, working our way down.
And then
Now,
3 points.
if you see, you're going to have some that are numbered, so 1 and 2s. It does not matter which side of the arch you place this on. So I could place, for example, on the upper, I could place tuberosity number 1 on the patient's left, and then go and place canine number 2 on the patient's left, and it won't hurt anything. The only place that it does matter is with those retromolar pads. So if I place, for example, retromolar pad buccal or center on the patient's right, I have to place the corresponding numbered points on that same side. So I have to place all the number 1s on one side and all the number 2s on the other side. I can't mix and match them. That's the only stipulation here. So in order to place things, I'm just going to start here with the upper. So I like to zoom in and just see the upper here. So I'm going to find the tuberosity. So it should be about right here. And you'll see as I click points, it places the point on the screen, moves my arrow down to the next point. So now it's my incisive papilla, which is right here. And so I can go around now and place all these points. So I know my canine points should be about here and here, because that's where I extracted them from. You'll also notice here that the points are color-coded. That's important. So I don't actually know when I get halfway through if I placed all the points in the right order. But by looking at the color codes, I know that if I have, for example, a green one right here, and then a blue one here and a blue one up there, I know I placed them in the wrong order. So if you place things in the wrong spots, you can left click and grab them, and you can drag them into the correct positions. So now I'm going to go down to the lower. So when I place the retromolar pad points, obviously on this I can't see where the retromolar pads are, because this patient was wearing a partial in the scan, and it's definitely wasn't meant for a lower denture, but I'm going to place the center point in the middle of the ridge on the retromolar pad, 2/3 of the way up, just like we normally would. And then I'm going to place the buccal point on the outermost border of the
You
retromolar
have
pad
to do
on the
this.
buccal
You have to
side,
see the occlusion.
and then the lingual point on the lingual-most point of the retromolar pad. You want to see, after you place the 3 points, a straight line across. So you don't want to see something that looks like this, or this, or this. You want them to be completely straight across when you look straight down on the retromolar pad. Then you've got your center ridge point, which is this green point here. So I usually look for my frenum and place it about right above that. And then I'm going to go here and do my other retromolar pad. And then I've got my 2 canine points. Now, some ways that you can check to see if you've placed everything accurately. Obviously, the scan is not great for this, but I can go here on the right. I've got a grid button here, so it looks like the little tape measure there. So when I select that, it turns on this grid on my screen. So let's say I'm trying to figure out if my canine points are in the same position. So I'm going to center my center ridge point in the middle of the bold crosshair, the center of the screen, like that. And then if I just take my mouse, you can see I get a measurement attached to the mouse. So I can see the right one is at 15 millimeters away. I can go over to the left one now and see that it's only 12.5 millimeters away. So I either need to move one closer or one further away to make sure that they're even. So I'm going to move this one in a little bit more.
How'd you pull up the grid?
It's this button right here on the right. And you can see as I move it, I have the measurement attached to my mouse, so I can get it pretty close to the other side. You can do the same thing with the retromolar pads. So 33, obviously these are gonna be way off because this retromolar pad is cut off. So I'm not gonna really do those, but at least my canine points are similar. Does anyone have any questions about this stuff?
We have to do this to be the same measurement.
It helps because for example, the canine points, it's gonna place lines on the top of the ridge, and then the canine point intersection, it's gonna give you like a little crosshair there where the canine point should go. So if you have one move back too far, they're not gonna be even aesthetic.
Okay, for tonight, how about the retromolar?
Don't worry about the retromolar pads because you're actually missing that retromolar pad, and that one is under there somewhere. So before I move forward, I'm going to turn back off my grid. So with the same button we turned it on with, and then I'll hit next. Yeah. So the measurement button is right here. So the first thing I do is I position my center ridge point right on that center bolded crosshair. And then once I do that, I just can drag my mouse over to each side, and I can see if they're even values. You just hold the mouse button, the middle mouse wheel down like a button, and you position it right over that.
Yeah, it's the little stuff that you pick up. The one little step.
Why is this insane, right? The retromolar, mandibular
And
point.
then because the measurement is attached to your mouse,
Oh, because
as you drag
see,
the
okay?
point, it'll
See, okay?
change the value.
And I think, yeah, that's the red one. Yeah.
Red one.
Yeah. So unfortunately, gotta clear everything and start again.
I find my story.
Now, one trick that you can also use here to see if like you're tilted like this or this when you're doing this is see how I zoomed out? And see how that bold line in the center goes right through the incisive papilla? Just a slight bit off there. So see how they go through that center line together, the incisive papilla and the center ridge point? So now that I have that, I can just position this on the crosshair. So now I know that I'm balanced on both sides of the arch from that center ridge. And now I can look and check. So 12.9, 12.5, so if I look back that one out a little bit, now I'm even on both sides. And I can do this on both the upper and lower, so if I wanted to center the incisive papilla point over that, I can do it with the tuberosities and the canine points up there as well. So you can do this on all your points to make sure you're balanced all the way around. Then you have your jaw boundaries here. So this is just the outlines or the borders of your denture base. So we're going to go through these. Same way as when you trimmed, all the same tools. And I'm going to show you one that's kind of neat after you draw your outline. So go ahead and draw your upper outline. And a lot of people ask me when they watch me do this, why I'm not cutting out the frenums. I don't like to do that in the design because digital doesn't like sharp points, and you usually end up with a sharp high point in there. I actually like to take a hand piece and go in there afterwards and just divide those out a little bit. It's a little easier, and it also saves you on the design because if I were to create this giant pie shape right here, it's going to mess up the way the gingiva aesthetics generates later on for the base. You're going to have all kinds of issues. So I just go straight across, and then I take a hand piece afterwards and I divide it out.
If you're printing though, does it make as much a difference?
It does. Yeah, because if you pie that out, when it generates the tissue design, you're going to get all kinds of weird stuff in between the centrals. So I just leave it alone.
Maybe have it fixed by the time we get back.
We'll see.
Now, some of the things you want to watch for when you're doing your outlines for your denture here. So we can see this base that it generated here, and then kind of these flat areas that connect to the scan. You want to make sure that if you did not sculpt those areas, that you keep the outline off of them. Otherwise, it's going to create some errors here, and you're going to have to go back there and fix those spots. So I usually kind of pull mine away and just go around and check and make sure that I don't have any. I know I did some up here that were a little close. So one other tool that you can use here that's kind of handy, it's not so much useful with the immediates as it is like your final impressions and your final dentures. If you right click on the outline, you can turn on this show local cross section here. So now when I have my points turned on, this won't work with fast edit line, it'll only work with the points. If I left click and hold a blue dot, see how it gives me that small cross section underneath? And as I move the blue dot, see how it moves along the outline of the scan? So I can see if I'm putting this outline in the deepest part of the vestibule or not with this cross section tool. Now, like I said, it doesn't work very well on immediates because immediates you typically have short borders, you've sculpted a lot of things, so it's not as detailed as a final impression, but you can use it here if you need to. I use it on my finals. Turn this off, and then I'm going to hit next and go to my lower. Now, if I've done anything